Hey, good morning, folks. Welcome. Baruch atah Adonai Le'olam Shalom. Borei, Chaim, 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 Brava. Hey, continue with the mimer, with the Hasidic discourse. And the fact that we want to do good doesn't always give us the strength to do the good. Um, Sometimes we feel weak. So the very fact that the king is in the field, and we have a desire to approach, to connect, to return, to do tshuva, right? The king receives everyone with a fine countenance. The very fact that you want, but yet may not be fulfilled. God has a fine countenance. He shows us to encourage us, to give us strength, that we should overcome all of the obstacles. In this month of Elul, as we prepare for a new year. Then the mimer adds, right, that God shows a panim seichakes, a wide smile to everybody. What is that more than receiving everybody? And the important is receiving. So receiving means you're receiving someone. Here means you're receiving someone who wants to get close. And you're receiving that person because of their desire to get close. You're receiving them with a fine countenance. You're giving them encouragement. You're not, you're not seeing the negative. Oh, if you really meant it, then, just like so important in human relations also, right? Because we have this need, because we're needy, we have expectations, and therefore we have expectations of people. And when they don't come through the way we want them to come through, um, maybe they came through 50%, maybe they came through 80%, whatever we tend to see what they're missing. We don't receive them with a fine countenance. They have challenges, difficulties. We don't tend to do that. So here God's saying, no, that's not what he does. Month of Elul, king is in the field. You're receiving all those people that want to connect, and even though they have obstacles, they have challenges, and maybe, don't always make it through those challenges. The fact that they want, he's showing a fine countenance. He's receiving them, rather, not showing, he's receiving that with a fine countenance to encourage that we could gain greater strength to receive the king. Now we add, not receiving, but you're showing, the king is showing a wide smile. What does it mean to show as opposed to receive? So receive means you're receiving someone, right? Something, or here it's someone who wants. Here it's that you show it's of your own. It's not precipitated by someone else. This is you. You're showing you, right? And what are you showing? And yet it's showing, right? Meaning you're showing it to another. Otherwise, there's no show, right? The show is for another. Plan, yeah. But it's there before. Before you're showing that wide smile precipitates it. It's your wide smile, right? It's not receiving, right? You receive someone, you show who you are, right? So who's God that he's showing? After the person is being received, after everyone is being received, right? The king is receiving everybody with this fine countenance. Adding now, he's showing this wide smile to everybody. Right. So what's this adding that he's showing? Person's is aroused or awoken with a desire to do tshuva. Hmm. Okay. So first is the desire that we have now. It's the tshuva. This brings a divine pleasure. A divine pleasure. One second. Should. It's very nuanced over here. Give me a moment. So what this brings out above in the king, God, right? That's the metaphor. King is God. That when we want to return to Hashem, it brings out a divine pleasure, right? His pleasure. What's God's pleasure in us? In Israel themselves, which is a pleasure not in what we do, but in who we are in our divine connection. In other words, does God have pleasure when we return to Him and do another mitzvah, study more Torah? Absolutely. Greater than that pleasure is in Am Yisrael themselves. This is of God Himself. When you receive somebody, you're receiving them based on who you're receiving, right? You receive them. based on who you're receiving. But when you're showing pleasure, that's what a wide smile is, right? Yeah. What precipitated the wide smile of the king is the fact that the people want to return. That's what precipitated the wide smile. But the wide smile is not, you know, it's not because it precipitated it, but that's not what the smile is about. The smile is the king's himself. It's his pleasure. What's his pleasure in the people? That's a real king. A very nuanced idea over here. Not in the fact that the people, that the nation, do something for the king, like what we do for God. Jewish people were given 613 commandments. So we do those things, and not only that, if we were distant from the king, we didn't do the commandments, and now we get closer to do the commandments. So all the more so, there's a pleasure in what? Oh, now okay, now you're doing what you're supposed to do. No, the pleasure is in now you're doing what you're supposed to do. The pleasure is in the people themselves. Wow. Now, this is awoken, so to speak, if you will, in heaven, right? In God. When we do that tshuva, when we do return, right? When we have the desire to do tshuva, so just as God has a pleasure in me, what does that now awaken within me? Right? As mind panim el panim, as a face reflects that which is shown to you. So if God now is smiling at me, so right, because he has a pleasure in me, so that would then produce in me that awareness that I have a pleasure in him, that he is, and just as God's pleasure is coming from the core of the essence of God, so likewise, that pleasure, the divine pleasure that I have, is coming from the core of me, meaning that pleasure is a real, um, you know, takes me over, if you will, right, and is thoroughly a part of me. Ooh. And then that gives me the empowerment to do complete tshuva. So this is extremely powerful idea. Make sure I expressed it well, that we get it. So first, I have to have a desire that I want the relationship. I have to desire, I want the relationship. And even though that want may not be effective, that I will express that in fully in my behavior. But God receives that. He accepts that. He accepts that. How? That's the idea of he receives everyone with a fine countenance. Oh, everyone. Those who are distant. those who, didn't, are having a trouble. But then we add that now that desire, right, that now develops in the effort to do tshuva, to come closer. What it further adds is that God has divine pleasure. He has divine pleasure. Not merely, but that effort that I'm making, that's the key. I guess it's the effort that we're making. That may not be complete yet, but I'm making a real, sincere effort to get closer to Hashem, to the divine. That awakens, not awakens the right word, but arouses above that God has actually pleasure in me. And that's really powerful, because it's hard to have pleasure in a person. Usually you have pleasure in a person because what they did, what they said, but we can get at something. We can get it, you have your child, or now I have grandchildren, and they do something that it's really wonderful. So I have grandchildren staying by me because my son and daughter-in-law away for a day and a half for a wedding out of town. So 3-year-old wakes up 4 o'clock in the morning. So I go. And already his brother, who's only 12, is already there and saying to him, come, you want to, I'm very gently and very nicely saying to him, you want to come in into my bed? I'll take care of you. He's crying, so he's not hearing it. And then he repeats it. And he brings him. That aroused in me a pleasure in seeing, in seeing the love, the gentleness, the care of a 12-year-old to a 3-year-old. That, I had a pleasure not only in what he did, but he did a pleasure in him. In him. Now, okay, that wasn't about tshuva, here it's in the form, but what I want to bring out is that often we have a pleasure in an individual because what they did for us, you did something for me that brought me pleasure. So it's not a pleasure in the person. It's a pleasure in what they did, and specifically because what they did for you. So, you're happy because they did something for you. So it's not about them. It's about what they did for you. So here what the Maimer is saying is that when we do tshuva, God doesn't have merely pleasure in me, in what I did for him. He's actually having pleasure in me. Ooh, that's powerful. Right? You think about God does for us, and so on. He's God, he's in control, he's the master, and therefore we do things back for him. And there's a contractual relationship, but this is taking it to a different level. a whole different level. That our desire to come close awakens within God, arouses, if you will, in the divine, a desire in me. Psh, that's an essential bond, an essential connection. And that's what we have with God, that through our desire to come close is revealed, awakened. Therefore, it's Mara, he's showing what? Himself to me. The pleasure that he's having to all of us that want to come.